So when you first moved to New York, what was that like? Because I know you went to MSM, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like it's a question now that I'm kind of like old enough to have people that are auditioning for schools and like trying to decide what to do, where to go. And it's easy for me to say because I went to school in New York for both degrees. I did undergrad and master's at MSM in 6 years right away. And obviously, I got a lot out of being in New York. You know, it's the best place to be ultimately. But that being said, you know, I still will tell kids like I had guys I went to school with that got a full scholarship to New School or had like half scholarship to Berkeley or Purchase or a state school where they're from was giving them a full scholarship and they got into say MSM or like NEC or somewhere and they had like no scholarship but they were so obsessed with like the idea of going to Juilliard that they were like I'm going to do it, I'm going to take out loans, I'm going to do it. And then so many of these kids after like a year or 2 years they like looked around and they were like, all right, wait, like all this shit is pretty much the same and I'm paying $50,000. Like, screw it. I'm going to transfer to New School. And, I'll still study with who I want and I'll still be right around all the sessions. And, I think looking back, the most important thing is go to somewhere where the private teacher, you're like really into them and what they can give you. And you like know you have a great vibe with them and then you just like lock yourself in a practice room and you just go shed because 99% of us when we're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're not like developed and good enough to go out to Smalls in New York and play your ass off and get hired for gigs. Like, and you don't even want to do that. Like, because the minute you go to Smalls and like step on a jam session and play, if you're a trumpet player, like nobody cares that you're 19 and you sound really good for a sophomore at MSM. It's like, no, okay, you're in the same pool as Roy Hargrove and Josh Evans and Freddie Hendrix and Frank Green, if you're a lead player, like all these guys that are just in New York making a living playing gigs. So when I was in college, my undergrad, I studied with Laurie Frank, who was this like famous brass pedagogue teacher for jazz guys, even though she was more of a legit teacher. And every summer in my undergrad, I'd be like, all right, Laurie, this is it. I'm going to like get an apartment in New York. I'm going to start going out to sessions. I'm going to start getting gigs. And she'd be like, you know what? Go back to Pittsburgh for the summer, play some gigs with your dad. Just keep practicing. Have your mom do your laundry, just relax another summer. And at the time I was like, like, come on, I'm ready. I'm ready. But now I know what she was saying. She was like, don't expose yourself to that world if you have more time to get better and be more prepared. Because once you put yourself out there, you're in the same pool as everyone else. So like if you're a tenor player and you're going out at Smalls, you're being compared to Joel Fromm and Seamus Blake and Chad Lefwis Brown and Lucas Pino, like they don't care that you sound good for an 18-year-old. It's just like you're in that pool. So why not go to the school, out of New York where you have a good private teacher and you can shed your ass off. And then when you're 21, you can go to Smalls and you're still have like your whole life in front of you,
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's a really interesting perspective because, well, also going back to the just the whole school thing, which is definitely a topic that we can kind of riff on because it's really, I think college is very much
You're
in the. Yeah, go ahead.
all right.
What was that?
No, I was saying you're at Purchase right now. Oh,
Correct.
I was
Yeah,
saying
yeah, yeah.
you're at Purchase, right?
I'm at Purchase right now, and so I have the insider perspective at the moment.
For sure.
Yeah, and so that's something we can talk about. Yeah, because we both definitely know people that went to a school which is objectively a really great school, but like you said, maybe doesn't necessarily have anything super special compared to another school that they weren't getting, into massive amounts of debt. And we all know people that are super killing, and they might have gigs and whatever else going on, but the fruits of their labor are much less when they're paying the value of a mortgage payment in loans. You
Dude,
know?
I look at the shining example of like my, class of people coming to school or coming to New York at the same time. We were just talking about him, Chad LB, Chad Lefkowitz, Bro Brown. Man, we were in Grammy band together, and Chad got into the Brubeck Institute, and he went to University Pacific, and he did that for 2 years, and that basically, you get like a certificate for that. It's not even like an undergrad. And then Chad, came to New York, went to New School for like 5 seconds, already had gigs and tours and could never go to class. So it was like, screw it. I'm just going to drop out. So Chad didn't even have an undergrad. And of all the people in my generation that like came up together, who's the guy that has like the university teaching gig in San Francisco that they fly him out every month? It's Chad. Like who has the most students on Skype? Who has like the, pedagogue books for sale on his website? More than anyone is Chad. And he doesn't even have a single degree, I don't think. At least at the time he didn't. So that goes to show, depending on what you want to do, if you're just kind of wasting away in school, you don't feel like you're learning anything and you're paying all this money. If you just want a gig, you don't need the degrees for that. I think the only reason that having a master's really is important is if you know you're going to want to get a teaching gig. Like if you know at some point you're going to be tired of like running around playing gigs, traveling, losing sleep, and you want like health insurance, or maybe you're going to start to have a family or something, then it might be nice to get like a teaching position at some college somewhere and like buy a house and stuff. But when you're like 21 years old, you're not really thinking that far down the road, thinking, oh, let me make sure I have a master's in case like middle-aged me wants health insurance. You just want to play, you just want to do gigs. So I don't know, if you just want to get out there and play and you're a little dark on school, unless you feel like you're going to use those degrees down the line for like a teaching gig, I'd save my money.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's smart, and I think parental pressure is also a massive component as well, just because parents, and I think the paradigm is shifting a little bit at this point. Maybe parents who are the age of our parents, a lot of them, or the vast majority of them, kind of view college as like an insurance policy. You get a degree, you'll be safe, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that once people are starting to realize that it's just in many, if not most cases, very much overpriced and not necessarily a good value for the money. Just with the ever increasing tuition costs, I think a lot of parents are kind of waking up to that, and so I'm optimistic for the future about it. But it's an interesting topic for sure.